Whatto, it's Harry, and welcome to video blog number 2. Yes, I decided I'd give it another go. And what I thought I'd talk to you today is about, well, it's the end of summer. And to me, the end of summer is always highlighted when the Goodwood Revival happens. That's like trying to squeeze the very last bit of summer out of the season. Well, Goodwood has been and gone, and we were there as usual. We do a mixture of things. We present some of the displays, particularly based around the 1940s. And we also were very fortunate in that Goodwood sponsored Harry and Edna on the wireless for a little while. So what I thought I'd do, we'll play the familiar sponsorship jingle. And then what was quite unusual, for a bit of a change for us, young Edna was interviewed by local radio when they asked her about some of the 1940s displays. And we've made a little montage up of some photos from the weekend, along with the interview that was done by the radio station. So enjoy. Toodaloo.
The Goodwood Revival proudly sponsors Harry and Edna on the wireless.
Simply back to the 1940s with Edna. Hello, Edna.
Hello.
The wind's got up a bit, hasn't it? Now, I wanted to talk to you about your fabulous home front store that you have, or stand, where you are looking back at life in the 1940s, and you told me about rag rugging, which I'd never heard of before. For the benefit of those of us who don't know what it is, tell me about it.
Well, we are, as you say, representing all elements of the home front during World War II, and one of the things people reminisce with us quite often about is rag rugging, and they remember as children either cutting up the rags, and it was basically any scraps of fabric that you couldn't rework into anything else. You would cut up into little strips and you would weave it into the hessian to make essentially a rag rug to go on your hearth or by the side of your bed.
And they look very nice.
They are. They can be really, really colourful, and you can do all sorts of designs and patterns.
Now, when I've done interviews with guys like you before, I love the 80s. I mean, that's really big at the moment, the 1980s. I can see the 90s being huge very soon when people who originally bought records as teenagers in the 90s are old enough to maybe have had kids and settled down, and the Britpop reunion is going to be massive. The 70s disco thing has been big for ages. The 60s, of course, is probably the most popular decade because of the Beatles and the Stones and Motown and Twiggy and E-Type Jags and winning the World Cup. 50s, of course, rock and roll. The one that I think is probably the most unexciting and the dullest, if you don't mind me saying, is the 1940s, because rock and roll hadn't been invented. The war was on and nobody had anything. Why the 1940s? And I don't mean that in a rude way, I'm just interested.
There's a huge, huge scene of 1940s, and it's not just kind of representing what our home front went through during the war years, but there's lots of scenes attached to it. So you're talking about music. There's a huge dance scene still very much alive that people go to dances, and we're not just talking about tea dances, there's swing dances. So we've got the emergence of pre-drive. So it's just as we start emerging and the Americans start coming over in 1944 and bringing their big band music, and obviously the sounds of Glenn Miller and the more swing music, people just love dancing, and you dance with a partner, and it's a very social scene, and that's what people enjoy.
And you look lovely in the vintage gear with your hair and you know, and everything you've got on, and I understand that, but I just kind of find it, I don't know, there's just, I think probably because when I think of the 1940s, I think of the war, I think of the awful times people went through, and how obviously that kind of pulled people on the home front together and gave us a huge, strong sense of community, when probably the sense of community was stronger than ever.
It was, and when we reenact the scene, when we recreate the scene, there is still that strong community sense. But people always assume war years as shortages, austerity, blandness.
Lights out.
Lights out. But if you look into it and you research it, actually, lots of women you speak to that wear the clothing love it, because clothing was cut for a feminine figure. And you had the hair. It was important for women's morale to produce lipstick, even with all the shortages, and nail varnish, because it was good for morale. So you can still have lovely hairdos, painted nails. You look glamorous because you have the shoes and the jackets and the handbags and the hats. So it's much more feminine scene than when you move into sort of 50s and then into the 60s.
I mean, some of these decades, they come and they go, and the 70s with the disco was huge, and now that's kind of given way to the 80s, which is much bigger than the 70s now as far as retro is concerned. Did Keep Calm and Carry On nearly killed the 40s off because it got so big. Keep Calm and Carry On. There was these little vintage tea parties everywhere. And then when they say with finance, when High Street follows Wall Street, get out.
Yeah.
And I always think once John Lewis and Marks and Spencer have jumped on that bandwagon and reproduced that stuff, maybe it's time to get out. But that's just what I assume. What did Keep Calm and Carry On do?
It made it more mainstream. So for us, it was a scene that existed, and lots of museums, historical houses, events wanted a wartime element, because don't forget, we still have the generations that don't necessarily were children in the wartime but lived through the shortages and rationings, because of course that went on into the 50s. So they remember that and they can reminisce with their grandchildren. But then, as you say, when we had things like Keep Calm and Carry On and the High Street started picking up reflections of the fashion, it did make it more mainstream. But for us, in some ways, that was brilliant, because it meant getting hold of clothing and shoes and reproductions was actually an awful lot easier.
Well, I mean, your stall looks fantastic. Let's give you a plug, your website. If people want to go and find out more, where are you, Edna?
Yeah, we are we're Harry and Edna Vintage Sweethearts, and we're www.harryandedna.co.uk.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend at Goodwood.
Thank you very much.